Okay. All right.
Hi
Go.
there. Yeah. Hi there. Welcome to our Friday Coffee Talk. I'm Stacy Brown Summers, Managing Director and owner of My Link Resources. And I am here with our recruiter, marketing person, and all around person who wears a lot of hats here at My Link, Ashton Bitten.
Hi.
Ashton. Um, my co-host, so to speak,
Yes.
to the show. Hey, we wanted to talk about a blog post that Ashton wrote recently about her experience that she had in Beijing, which gave her an empathetic view for how immigrants or not limited people with limited English proficiency might feel here in the U.S. and why it's important to be able to support them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, Ashton, give us a little bit of background. What the heck were you doing in Beijing?
Yeah. Okay. So what happened was basically I finished my bachelor's degree in English, and my idea was I was going to go abroad and teach English. And so I had a friend the very beginning of 2016 who basically emailed me and said, "Hey, I've been teaching English in Beijing for the last couple of years. If you have your bachelor's in English and you want to teach, come on over. You can sleep on my couch. I know you like to travel, which I do love to travel." And so I went. I booked a ticket and I flew to Beijing and found a job teaching English there. So that's kind of how I ended up in Beijing. But yeah.
So, you were there to teach English, like you worked for a school or?
Yeah, I worked for a couple of schools. So the first one that I worked for was what they call a cram school. And basically what that is expats who may or may not have a degree. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They go over and they basically teach English to really young kids as kind of like an after school program. And so I was teaching like 3 to 6 year olds, like really, really young kids. And it was just basic stuff like, alphabet, colors, numbers, animals, really,
For
really
kids
basic.
who didn't really have exposure to English except for the
Right.
school.
Exactly. And like in
Mm-hmm.
public schools, there's a little bit of English going on, and there are different schools where, they might be more English centric. But, you know, if parents had the opportunity and could afford it, they would send their kids to these after school programs.
Got it. Okay. That sounds cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, you enjoyed it?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. It was fun. I
Yeah.
mean, I forgot to mention. So at first I worked for a cram school and then I worked at Renmin
Okay.
University. And so it was a big age shift, going from 3 to 6 year olds to, 19 to 23-year-olds, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like a full range, but it was really, really fun. Definitely an awesome experience. I was only there for about 6 months, 6 or 7 months. So it wasn't super long, but it was long enough to kind of get the feel for what it's like to be an expat in a different country and,
Mm-hmm.
in a place where I didn't know the language at all. I still can't really
Yeah.
speak Chinese at all, but it was fun nonetheless. So
Yeah. So, you were really you were living there without the ability to communicate in the primary language that's spoken there.
exactly. And I fell into that common assumption that pretty much every major city in the world will have, I guess, access to materials and things in English.
You brought
Um,
your American privilege with you.
I totally brought my American privilege with me on that one, and I feel bad saying it, but I
It's
was
a learning experience.
20. Yeah. Yeah, I was 20. I didn't know. So, yeah, I get
Yeah.
there, and of course, there's really
Not
not a
so
lot of
much.
English going on.
And people were like, learn Chinese, get out of here. You
I
know how they
mean,
say that.
not really.
Mm.
It was kind of more like oh, here's a foreigner. Typically, Western white foreigners don't necessarily make an effort to learn Chinese. And so while I was there, I did make an effort to learn Chinese because I was interested in doing that. Little did I know Chinese is an incredibly difficult language to learn. If
Can't be learned in 6 months.
no, definitely not. It's,
by my
and
understanding.
my language background is mostly in Spanish. So
Yeah, it
yeah, so it was
wasn't
pretty hard.
really similar. So you mentioned that you really got kicked out of the bad Chinese to
Oh
English
my gosh.
translations that you would see.
Yes. Yes, there were so many of those. I mean, like I would see maybe 3 to 5 of them every single day just leaving the house. Like there was a
Mhm.
bank just next door to my house, and there was a big sign in the window that said, it was like a shirt with like little lines above it indicating that it might be like it might smell bad or something like that, and it just said no smelly, like you can't go in if you smell bad or something like that.
That's
But
interesting.
I know,
Really
I still to
figured
this
out.
day, I will never know what it actually said because that was the English translation and there was Chinese,
Uh-huh.
but it probably
No
said,
smelly. Mm-hmm.
it was probably like the equivalent of no shirt, no shoes, no service, I would assume, but no
I'd like to
smelly.
see how that played out. Like if you walked in there and you were sweaty and smelly, would they kick you out?
I mean, probably not. Because it was like,
It
it
had to
wasn't
mean something. Maybe like perfumes or something. Like
something, I don't know. I
who
have no
knows?
idea.
Who knows?
I mean, it was one of those things where it wasn't actually a bank. It was like a big room with, I think, 6 ATMs just
Mm-hmm.
kind of stacked next to each other, but it was like an enclosed space. I don't know how to explain it. It was
Okay, we
distinctly
can't even speculate
distinctly
what that was
Chinese, I
about.
think. I've
We'll
never
just
seen it.
let that mystery be there.
Right, right. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's whole websites about that. Chinglish. I think there's one called
Yep.
chinglish.com or something.
So
So
accurate.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
Oh yeah.
But well, so let's move on to the when you got sick. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was probably the most traumatic experience in all of China for me.
Yeah.
What happened is, so I was taking like a weekend trip to Hong Kong. And when I got to Hong Kong, I just like, you know how you go up in an airplane and your ears like get popped, or they're kind of like plugged or something like that. That
Mm-hmm.
happened, but then it just never went away. And then my tonsils just like explode, like they just felt like they were on fire. And I was like, what the heck is going on? I got this really bad fever, like chills, sweating, all that stuff. And I was like, okay, there's something seriously wrong with me. And so I went home back to Beijing, and I get home and I'm like, oh, maybe it's a cold, it'll blow over. Like I've had this, because that was the second or third time that I had gotten that while I was there, because the air quality is so bad. You
Mm.
get like weird colds. I got like a weird cold every month, but it was something where it was like you're just knocked down, like drag out, messed up for like a day, and then you're fine. And it was just a matter of like drinking a lot of hot water, which is like the cure all in China,
Yeah.
and just like laying around, and then you're fine.
Yeah.
But this one, it was like 3 or 4 days, and I was like, this isn't going away on its
Gotta
own.
go to the
Like,
doctor.
this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that I didn't know is there in Beijing, a hospital is basically a doctor's office. So
Okay.
if you have a cold or something, you go to the hospital. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so expensive. How on earth am I going to pay for this? Because I'm used to like American hospitals where if you go to a hospital in America, you're going to be doling out a bunch of money and it's going to be a big deal. But
Right.
I had friends there and they kept telling me like, no, you need to go to the hospital. There's one hospital that like serves English speakers. And the school that I was with at the time only covered health expenses at that particular hospital. And so I was like, all right, got to figure it out. So I went over there and, walked into the first building I could find because I was just so messed up. And I was like, I need to check in, like I'm sick. And I was met with just like a look of deer in the headlights. Like she clearly did not speak English. She had no idea what was going on. And I was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Like just a total wave of dread washed over me. Like, what am I going to do? I don't even know where to begin. Like I couldn't find like a map of the campus or anything. Like, I couldn't find any information online because everything was in Chinese and I can't speak Chinese, and like the translation thing wasn't working. Because at that point, like my VPN wasn't connecting or something like that. And then like Baidu Translate, which was like the Chinese equivalent of Google Translate, wasn't loading. And so I was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have no idea. And so I just started walking around, like, and I'm pretty sure I looked like a zombie. I'm pretty sure everyone that saw me was probably like, stay like 10 feet away from her. Like, she's so messed up. And I just remember like wandering through the halls, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I am. Like, I need help, but no one here understands me. And then finally, like, I remember looking down at the ground and like in scuffed out faded letters, it said something like expat wing in English, something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I've never been so happy to see English words in my life. I was so so I like, you know, do the whole zombie thing, walk on down there. And I'm just like, English, like anyone, English. And finally someone comes out and she's like, oh, what's wrong with you? In English. And I'm like, yes, thank God, here we go. And I like tell her, whatever, not a big deal. And but the whole time it was kind of like there was a mix of like pretty intense, I think, cultural misunderstandings. Because, you know, I was saying basically like, you know, my go-to when I go to a hospital is like say everything, you know, from the moment that I start feeling sick to then like tell them everything that happened. That's like what you expect. But I started doing that and the response was basically like, because, you know, I started by saying like, oh, I started feeling bad when I went on the airplane. And they were like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you then. It's just because you went on the airplane. I was like, no. There's more. You know, like, look at my tonsils. You know, I have a fever. It's been 3 days, 4 days, something like that. You know, I need to see a doctor. And after like 30 minutes of trying to explain, they finally checked me in, got me into the doctor. The doctor didn't speak any English at all. And so, yeah, the doctor basically like looked at me, like looked down my throat, you know, checked my ears, whatever. And basically like wrote something down and like shoveled me out into this area where I was supposed to pick up medicine. And so of course this whole time I'm like, I don't know what they just gave me. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know anything that's going on right now.
I don't care.
Yeah. But he's like, he seems to think he knows what's wrong and how to fix it. So I'll just do it. And I remember I got literally 30 to 40 boxes of some kind of herbal supplement. I don't know what it was. I think it was echinacea. I don't know. And I just remember taking a picture of everything and sending it to my one friend who spoke Chinese. And I was like, what is going on? And he was like, oh yeah, you have tonsillitis. And I was like, what? Tonsillitis? What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I could have told you that. I'm like, what? Okay. So he basically told me everything that the doctor wrote on the piece of paper and like how to take the medicine and everything. And but yeah, I just remember the whole time thinking like, you know, this is something that immigrants in America deal with every single day. But they're not coming over with the assumption that people are going to be able to speak their language in the first place.
Right.
You know?
There's a good chance there's not going to be a Somali wing of a hospital. Right.
Exactly. So I don't know. That just made me realize like this is, I don't know, like the white American privilege that I brought over is kind of like, you know, you expect to kind of be tailored to and be taken care of.
Yeah.
Because people just say like, you know, English is a very common language. It's the most common like second learned language in the world, things like that. But you know, it just made me realize like people are dealing with this, but probably to a much greater extent every single day in the States. And this is something that,
well, it gives you more compassion and help. Yeah, I can see that experience would make, you know, you want to find ways so that doesn't have to happen like that. If somebody is in some sort of a crisis, like sick or something, it seems like, and there's help available.
Right.
You know, it seems like they should be able to access that.
Exactly.
The technology we have.
The resources.
But I like how you were saying there was a cultural difference, because as an American, you're in your culture, you just wanted to like blurt out everything, you know.
Exactly.
And where maybe for them, you know, they would expect you to just kind of start at the end and go backwards, or just go with the symptoms you're experiencing right at that moment.
Right. Something like that. I mean, I can't know for sure. I never asked explicitly, but just from that experience and a couple of other times that I was in Chinese hospitals with friends at the time, it seemed like there was a pretty big divide, just culturally speaking, with how you explain symptoms and things like that. So
right, even without the language piece, right?
Right.
And I think that happens in the US a lot too, where they're not only, even if you have an interpreter there in the room, and again, a good interpreter will help the doctor or the nurse or whoever understand the culture of that patient.
Right.
You know, but it does help a lot to kind of know, well, they're probably, you know, maybe in this culture, like in America, we like to just say everything wrong with us and, you know, whatever. We love that. But in other cultures, you know, if you're Japanese, you barely even say what is wrong, you know. Right. So you have to kind of dig that out a little bit more.
Right.
So I think it just helps enrich and helps reach people and help people once you have that understanding.
Yeah, definitely.
So you learned a valuable lesson that day.
Boy, did I. But I still have my tonsils, so
I don't know if that's a good thing. That must, I have also experienced lots of tonsillitis, and it's
nice.
Not fun.
Well, but, I only ever had it in China, so.
Well, hopefully it stays that way. So any other lessons that you learned that you'd like to share with us?
I mean, I have many lessons that I learned from my time in China, but just to keep this video short, I should probably cut it off.
We'll save that for later. But
we can expand on this within the series for sure. I have many stories of.
I always thought the world would be better if everyone was required to live in another country for 6 months to a year after high school or college. Because you do empathize a little bit more and know what it feels like to be the minority and know what it feels like to. And I think it just helps you be like a better person in general. I don't know. That's my opinion about it, but it helps you be a better, citizen of the planet, right?
For sure.
We all want to strive for. So
yeah, definitely. Cool. I agree.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your story. We'll put a link to Ashton's blog post in this video. Definitely subscribe so that you're not going to miss other coffee talks where we're going to talk about cultures, language, and we'll have some people we're going to interview. We have some cool stuff coming up, so stay tuned. And if there's something you want us to talk about, we'd love to hear.
Shoot us an email, send a comment. We would love to address anything.
Sure thing.
Yeah, cool.
All right, thanks for making it to the end.
Thanks. All right, we'll see you next week, everyone.
Have a good week. All right.
Bye.